Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio, where we provide actionable health information on a week-to-week basis that can help you improve your life. Feel free, head over to justinhealth.com, where we have various opt-in video series on more in-depth health topics such as female hormones, thyroid, and gut health. Also, while you're there, feel free and schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or my colleagues. We're available worldwide to provide natural health support for any of your major health issues. Again, welcome to the podcast and enjoy the show. We are live. It's Dr. J in the house. Evan, how are we doing today, man?
Doing well. Let's dive in. Let's have some fun. We're going to talk all about autoimmune paleo, which is the template that we push a lot of people towards, not because we're some dogmatic, attached to our cards kind of people, but because we like results. We like clinical success. We like people to get better. We like people to reverse their health issues. We like people to take back their health. We like people to get off their medications when their doctor allows them to. And autoimmune paleo is by far the best template you and I have ever implemented clinically, which has given us those various types of success. So where should we start?
Yeah, so off the bat, what is autoimmune paleo? So it's a good starting point. It may not be good for everyone out of the gates. For me, it depends, right? I see a lot of patients that are sick and that have done a lot of things, and this is like the next logical step. If people were coming in to see me and they already have, let's just say, have a really kind of crappy kind of standard American diet, I may just start out with a paleo diet out of the gate. So we have paleo, right? That's like no grains, legumes, dairy, and then like kind of butter, maybe like acceptable within that range. That, and then obviously no legumes, grains. So no grains, legumes, or dairy, butter acceptable, meat acceptable, vegetables, non-starchy veggies, and then of course good healthy fats, right? Nuts, seeds, dairy-based fats, animal fats are all acceptable. Okay, and then we have paleo. I call it paleo 2.0, which is the equivalent to an autoimmune paleo template. And you notice how we use the word diet, not, so we use the word template, not diet. I don't like the word diet because diet it's very inflexible. This is what you eat, where a template gives you the ability to adjust things. So I like the flexibility within the description template. So an autoimmune template versus the paleo template, paleo is no grains, no legumes, no dairy. Autoimmune is no nuts, seeds, nightshades being tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers, and eggs. And so within that template, we're still going to be having healthy proteins, healthy fats from animal products, fats that are nut, seed, and dairy free, but healthy animal products. Other fats like olive and avocado and palm and coconut are all great. And then carbohydrates from fruits, from vegetables, minus the tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers. And we can adjust the macros accordingly, proteins, fats, and carbs. So that's kind of a good first step out of the gate. So paleo, and then paleo 2.0, which is going to be autoimmune paleo. And these are all paleo template, autoimmune template out of the gates.
Yeah, and people don't necessarily need to get stuck on the 2.0, the AIP forever, okay? So this is not a podcast to say, look, everybody needs to do this. As Justin mentioned earlier, we're working with a lot of people clinically who've been to 5, 10, 20 practitioners before us. They've been on every diet under the sun. They've done every treatment under the sun, whether it's naturopathy, homeopathy, functional medicine doctors, conventional doctors. They've already been through the ringer. So in our patient population, it's a bit more skewed towards the autoimmune because of the type of people we're seeing. Now, occasionally we'll get people in that are just healthy people that want to feel better, or athletes, and those people are not as compromised. And so for those, maybe we're just standard paleo and there's a lot more flexibility. So just want to make that distinction, because I don't want your average person who doesn't really have any major concerns thinking they need to go, stick with AIP for life.
100%. Now, what if you don't have an autoimmune diet? What if you don't have an autoimmune disease? Should you do an autoimmune template? Well, here's the deal. The autoimmune template, really the goal is you're cutting out any food that has a higher chance of being hyperallergenic, right? There's a lot of data on these different studies with nuts or seeds that they have anti-nutrients in them, right? Oxalates, phytates, they affect protein digestion, mineral absorption, and they can be irritating on the gut lining. So there's a lot of hyperallergenicity, increased immune activity. And then they also have maybe potentially more omega-6 fatty acids that can drive down more of the pro-inflammatory pathway. So the goal is that we're trying to reduce some of these anti-nutrients that have a negative impact on the gut lining. And then number two, we're trying to increase nutrient density. All right. So we're choosing foods that are higher in better fats, right? Fats that aren't polyunsaturated, fats that are more polyunsaturated, they can be damaged and they can be oxidized, right? So animal fats, coconut oil, saturated fats, not so much. And then just the gut permeability aspect. So we see nuts and seeds fit that criteria. Eggs potentially, even though eggs are awesome and so nutrient dense with a good vitamin A and fat soluble vitamins and cholesterol in the yolk, especially, they're amazing. So sometimes those compounds could be a little bit more allergenic. So can the nightshades with the alpha solanine compound in there and the saponins. They could be a little bit more irritating on the guts, get into the joints, create inflammation. So it depends. The goal is really that it's just a nutrient dense, anti-inflammatory, and then low in toxins, but more importantly, plant toxins, anti-nutrients.
Yeah, well said. And the reason you're bringing up the lectins and some of these other compounds of these foods are because they're going to contribute to increased intestinal permeability. So when you're talking with anyone, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis or some other autoimmune disease, there's always a domino that has to fall, which is that the gut is leaky. This increased intestinal permeability has to take place. Now, we've gone into the details of why that can happen from the infection perspective, low stomach acid, food fermenting in the gut, bacterial overgrowth, parasites, emotional stress, overtraining. We've tried to hit a lot of these different variables that can go into the leaky gut, but you can also have all the lifestyle infection piece dialed in. But if you're eating, let's just say you're doing salsa on your cassava flour tortillas and your grass-fed ground beef, but you're just doing, I don't know, corn chips and salsa all the time with that, it's possible that a lot of those lectins, like you may get from your nightshades, like your tomatoes and peppers, those can irritate the gut lining, contribute to that leaky gut, and then that's going to increase your autoimmune risk. Or if you're already autoimmune, it may potentially flare you up depending on what's going on.
Absolutely. There's one study that came out looking at people that have potential autoimmune genetics. They have the likelihood to make 10 times more IgG antibodies against certain foods than healthier foods. And in this one study, it's called Food Intolerance in Patients with Manifest Autoimmunity, observational study. It's in the Journal of Autoimmune Reviews. They talk about that the IgG level for specific foods were higher in the patient group than the control group. So these people that had autoimmunity, they had more antibodies. And what they found was they saw a significant increased level in IgG. That's a type of antibody that's produced. And most doctors only look at IgE, which is anaphylactic type of allergy response, immune response. And that's like, you need the EpiPen for that, right? And so this is kind of IgG. There are other types of responses that aren't even in that IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE category. And so IgG isn't the be all or end all, by the way, but they found that casein, cow's milk, wheat gliad, and white of the eggs, rice, even some nuts and walnuts and almonds tended to have more of a allergenic IgG response. They found no antibody reaction with vegetables and fish and meat products. They seem to be very immunoglobulin neutral. Guess what we do with an autoimmune template or a paleo template? We're cutting most of those foods out. Obviously, with autoimmune, we're focusing cutting the eggs out and the nuts and the seeds out too. It's about decreasing the immune response. People that have a lot of autoimmunity, their immune system is sucking up lots of energy and lots of resources because it's responding to all this food in a negative way. And so the goal is we're just trying to calm down the immune system. And then those foods aren't there. We don't have the gut permeability. Therefore, the body can use those resources better versus having the immune system hyper responding.
Yep, well said. Now, one other point too, why would this be beneficial to do or to go down this rabbit hole? And as I mentioned, maybe not forever, right? Maybe temporarily we pull out eggs. For me, I pulled out eggs for a long time when I had gut bugs. I had Ann Louise on the podcast and we talked all about gallbladder and eggs and how there's a big factor there where eggs can irritate the gut, just based on the gallbladder issues. And so I pulled them out and now I can tolerate eggs, no problem. Duck eggs, I tried experimenting with those for a while. Some argue duck eggs are a little easier. Quail eggs, I've played with those a little bit. I can't say that I've noticed a huge difference among the different types of eggs, but I think it's a cool experiment when you try to get into the reintroduction phase where you're going back to Paleo 1.0 and adding eggs and things back in. Nuts for me, same thing. I used to get really, really bad headaches from walnuts. So I cut those out for a while. If I do a little bit of those, I'm okay. So the good news is your body can calm down. And that's one thing that this diet will help you do is it'll help you to identify your trigger foods, because if you're just eating a bunch of different stuff and your diet is too varied, and if you're not tracking it, you don't have a clue. If you go and you have a salad where you've got walnuts and pecans and cranberries and tomatoes and whatever on your salad, you're not going to have a clue what's irritating you. But if you go AIP for a bit, now you're going to know, hey, you know what? As soon as I add it back in those tomatoes, boom, my joints hurt. And then you'll have a much, much more clear path. So if anything else,
Correct.
it's more helpful to use the journal plus reintroduce foods, and it can be amazing. That's how you really figure out what you tolerate, what you don't.
Yeah, I tell patients you don't really know how dirty you get until you get really clean, right? Once you're really clean and then you get dirty, you're like, okay, I get it. I'm dirty right now, right? What does that mean? We want a clean baseline. So what's the clean baseline? In my analogy, the clean shower is the baseline. And in regards to the food, that's the autoimmune diet. The autoimmune diet is the clean shower. It's getting really clean. So then when we start to maximize the diet, usually people are going to see benefit within a couple of weeks and or a month. And I always like patients to kind of plateau. Some are plateau within 3-4 weeks where they may see a lot of improvement in joint pain or energy or brain fog. And then it's like, okay, good. Now they're kind of like running out of steam in regards to their initial jump and improvement. So I want patients to typically be on the diet for 4 weeks and to plateau for at least 1 week before they do any reintroduction. Some autoimmune patients, they continue to see significant improvement week after week, and it may last a couple of months. So patients that are like that, I'm a little bit more strict on what they're on their reintroduction. Now, it's usually not that big of a deal because if you get those kind of results, those results speak for themselves and they really motivate you a ton. So it's not like twisting an arm to get someone to follow that diet longer because the results are guiding us that we're on the right track. So I tell my patients, if you're gambling and you're on a streak playing poker or blackjack, I'm not going to pull you off the table, right? I'm going to let that streak roll a little bit. Same thing with the diet. So if we have a lot of success coming out of the gates, I'm going to let it roll. I'm going to let you plateau. And then we have a specific reintroduction protocol and how we add foods back in. And I'll go into that in a minute.
Yeah, well said. And, there's not a lot of money involved with this, meaning you can't really make money just by getting people to eat meats and veggies. So the problem is there's not too many studies. Now, I don't know if you want to pull it up, but I just sent you one in the chat for those watching on video. They may be able to see this. It's a PubMed study here. It was in the Inflammatory Bowel Disease Journal, 2017. As I mentioned, there's not much money in this, right? So it's probably going to be few and far between clinical trials on autoimmune diets because there's no drug involved and big pharma isn't going to pay some random guy to do a diet trial, right? But anyway, this was a study on patients with irritable bowel disease, and they did it for 6 weeks, followed by 5-week maintenance. And it just goes into the results here. It talks about significantly improving people with ulcerative colitis and significantly improving Crohn's disease. C-reactive protein, they said, didn't change much, but the calprotectin, which is a marker we measure on the stool panel, it improved from 471, which is high,
Wow, that's really high.
to 112 at week 11. And also for
Wow,
those that did,
huge drop.
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you're talking hundreds of points just with diet alone. And then it
Wow.
says here, among those with follow-up endoscopy at week 11, improvements were also noted in a simple endoscopic score for Crohn's disease and a Mayo endoscopy subscore. So we're not obviously running that. We're not doing scopes on people. We're running stool panels, but I've seen the same thing. I had a guy who had calprotectin above 1,000. It was insane. He had pancolitis where it was the whole colon and, pretty much the whole intestinal tract was involved. It was pretty sad, but just with now, technically in his case, we didn't do just diet. We did a lot of really, really potent aloe extract, but I mean, we were able to get calprotectin down hundreds and hundreds of points within a few weeks. So there's the proof.
100%. Those are all excellent points. A couple people in the chat here, Andrew Hill wrote in that we got to be careful with tapioca because it's a similar cassava, similar to latex. And yeah, if you're a sensitive person, we may want to even cut that out for a few weeks before we add that in. Technically, that may be allowed, right? Cassava, yucca, tapioca are in that same kind of family. I think it's the same thing, just different names, but that may be something we want to work on excluding. Others may just be some of the spices, like pepper, some of the nuts or seeds or spices that are something that you don't eat, but it's more of a topical kind of thing on the food. Got to be careful over that if you're really sensitive. Usually food's going to have a dose dependency. So the more of that food you eat, the more the immune reaction will be exacerbated due to it. So we keep an eye on those things for sure. Riley wrote in that basically he wanted to know, take on the food sensitivity test. When does a food sensitivity test become beneficial? So my issue with food sensitivity tests is most of them come back with some level of autoimmune foods on there for people. Okay, that's number one. So I always look at tests. Does it change the treatment? So most are going to have some of these foods on there, number one. Number two, if it doesn't have those foods on there, would a patient still benefit from cutting those foods out? That's the important question, because your immune system may be responding in a way outside of a typical IgG or IgE test. There are other tests out there that look at, like the MRT or the ELISA Act, look at other type of T cell intermediary responses, which could be it. But I still know people that run these tests and they have their patients that test perfect for gluten. And then now you're in this conundrum is, do you allow your patient to eat gluten now because the test says gluten's fine? Because we know there may be an immune response happening in the body outside of what's being tested. So that's why I don't like it, because you can give a lot of false sense of security that you can eat gluten or other grains. Number two, I've seen benefits cutting those foods out, even when it says it's fine. So for me, it doesn't change what I'm doing enough for the value, for the cost. And I'd rather use that money on another lab or a stool test or supplementation that's going to be more root cause supportive.
Well said. I'm going to take that as my soundbite. So anytime
Yep.
somebody says, Evan, why won't you run a food sensitivity test on me? I'm going to say, my good friend, Dr. Justin said it better than me. And then I'm going to play them your little soundbite you just did, because it was so good. But I agree. And that's exactly what I do is I just tell them, look, save your money. Let's go AIP, and then let's do reintroductions plus you journal. And we find that that's going to be far better. I mean, when you look at gluten, for example, I have seen people where it does show up as that it's going to be okay. However, they know when they eat it, they don't feel as good. They feel a little brain fog. They feel bloated. And that didn't show up on paper. So then they're confused. And then the husband goes, see, I told you you're crazy. Eat a pizza. And then you just get yourself in trouble again. So
yes. Now, where food allergy tests may be helpful, it doesn't quite fit into the patients that I see, is if a parent is trying to help a child or a family member who is totally uncompliant and resistant to doing anything. And if we can get some lab data saying to avoid these foods, that may help with leverage. But most people are coming to see us. They're investing a lot to work with us. So they're pretty darn compliant. If we say, don't do that, let's save you some money, they just typically listen to us. Number one. Number two is, if you're already at a great, super high level of health and you want to see if there's any maybe weird foods there, then that may be helpful to look and see if there's any other foods that are there. The problem is, if it says don't eat raspberries and then you eat blueberries, what's the chance that blueberries are now on the list next month? Right? That's where it becomes this like whack-a-mole, where you're like whack one and the other one pops up over here and you're like, crap.
That's a very good point. Yeah, the compliance and the leverage. I mean, that's the reason that we do some of the testing in regards to the infections too, because somebody will say, hey, I feel like I've got this. I want you to just give me a parasite protocol. I think I've got parasites. You and I've covered this before. People come in and they have this idea of what they think's wrong with them, and they just want us to pursue that rabbit hole with them. So we'll come in and we'll use the data first to look on the paper. You know what? Actually, no, we think this is a bigger priority over here, and then we circle back. So yeah, that's a great point.
Absolutely. So I think we want to always look at, the root cause, why you're sensitive to these foods. So of course we want to be fixing the gut. That's going to be ideal. Whether it's SIBO or H. pylori or bacterial issues, you want to work to the 6 R's, because patients have a chance of having increased risk of food allergens when the food's not broken down properly. So adequate levels of enzymes and acids, chewing your food, masticating your food well, not overly hydrating when you eat, adequate enzymes, adequate acids, all very helpful at being able to break down the food. Again, if you love it, rotate it. If you're eating beef every single day over and over again, your chance of a beef allergy goes up, right? But you saw the study I just mentioned earlier. That study showed much less chance of animal products and vegetables causing an allergen, right? So we cut out the big foods that are going to be the highest risk. Now, outside of that, there's a reintroduction plan that I infuse with my patients when it's time. So we add each food back in over a 2 to 3 day period. So we'll start with egg yolks before eggs, ghee before butter, 1 nut, 1 seed, 1 nightshade at a time. And typically a very small amount of that food on day 1, a little bit more on day 2. And if we have no negative symptoms, then usually we're good and we can go to the next food. If we're on the fence, we can have a day 3 where we eat a larger amount of food, because the response tends to be dose dependent. Small amount of bad food that for you, small amount of symptoms. Larger amount of food, larger amount of symptoms. So then if you stair step the dose up, usually the symptoms go up as well. So if you're on the fence, it gives you that ability to be confident that you're sensitive or not. And we go right down the list.
Yeah. So give me a little bit of concrete like view. How would that look? So today's Monday when we're recording. So let's say you want to add back in almonds for me. You're going to have me do what? Just a few?
Yeah. So let's just start in the right order. So egg yolks before eggs. So I may go and I may poach one egg. Poach it, it comes up. I'm keeping the yolk a little bit soft. Why? I don't want to oxidize it. I trim away the egg white. Egg white tends to be more allergenic. Feed it to my dog, have the yolk. How do I feel that day? Good. If I do okay, let's do 2 yolks tomorrow. Trim it away. Good. Excellent. Great. Awesome. Very good. Next day, we're going to add in the full egg. Now we're going to do a little omelet, right? But we're not going to overly cook up the egg yolk, the egg white. I'm sorry. We'll keep it so it's, the whole egg's blended, but it's going to be a little bit more wet because we don't want to overly oxidize the cholesterol and the proteins that are in there, right? Oxidized cholesterol and protein tend to be more hyperallergenic, higher immune response. And then if we're good there, then we go to ghee. Why ghee? Ghee's clarified butter, less lactose, less casein, right? The casein and lactose have the biggest problem. If you can tolerate ghee, great. Now we go to butter the next day, same kind of stair step. Some of my sensitive patients can handle ghee, can't handle butter. So we always want to start with the least allergenic to the most. So if we can handle an egg yolk, but not the egg, guess what? We at least have an egg yolk in our diet. If we handle the ghee, but not the butter, well, we at least have some of that good butter fat, clarified ghee back in our diet. So we always go least to most, where if we did it the other way around, you wouldn't have been able to add the food back in.
Yep, that's great. Okay, and then when do you bring in some of the nuts, the seeds? How do you do those? Any particular order you found better or worse?
Yeah. So I would just start with if you're going to do almonds, you could just do 1 or 2 almonds, right? And again, sprouted is a little bit better, right? Where it's soaked, that can deactivate some of the anti-nutrients, the lectins, the phytates, right? The oxalates. So you can do just a couple of almonds, maybe 1 teaspoon or tablespoon of almond butter. And the next day you can double or triple that dose. See how you feel. If you're okay, that's a good sign. But of course, deactivating some of the anti-nutrients can be helpful too. And then the next day, let's say pecans are in your routine. Try pecans, try pistachios or walnuts. And again, if you're not eating those foods on the reg, it's not that big of a deal, right? Just try to choose the nuts or seeds that are more on the regular, things that you're doing more on a daily routine.
And of course, we want to make sure these are organic. We want to make sure these are fresh. I advise keeping your nuts in the freezer. Like I keep my pecans in the freezer, and they taste so good frozen too. Like I'll take pecans out of the freezer, do a little bit of maple syrup. Oh my God, you talk about delicious.
Oh, totally. Yep, 100%. Now, here's the other deal too. So then we have, let's say you're able to get nuts or seeds or nightshades or eggs back in, right? You get everything back in. Do we ever allow grains? Now, I always just tell patient, it depends on how significant a patient is. If we know someone has diagnosed autoimmune condition, I always try to stay more on the grain-free side. I hate the word gluten-free because you can be gluten-free and eat lots of processed rice and oats and corn, and that could be a problem, right? Because the prolamines are the umbrella, the prolamine umbrella. Gluten is one prolamine under that umbrella, right? The most common one is the wheat, barley, and rye, the gliadin prolamine. Then you have horzonin, which is rice. You have avenin, which is oat, right? You have zine, which is corn. So these are still like brothers and sisters of the gliadin protein. So just like you may see someone, a brother or a sibling, and you may be like, oh, you must be so-and-so. You look just like him. There's a family resemblance. Well, your immune system has that same kind of resemblance with other proteins that are cousins and brothers and sisters of gliadin. And so your immune response can be triggered. Also, there's a lot of data in the non-celiac gluten sensitivity research that grains, even if you're not allergenic to them, can still increase gut permeability. And the more you increase gut permeability, the greater chance you have of creating more inflammation or triggering autoimmunity. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean never eat grains? It just means my general recommendation is always try to be grain-free if you can have a substitute. If you're relatively healthy, good health, and you have no autoimmunity, could you eat some grains that have gluten here or there? Probably. You could probably get away with it, and it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. I wouldn't recommend it being a staple because those foods, they're still inflammatory. They still have a lot of nutrient blockers in there, and they still aren't nutrient dense. So I still much rather I much rather see someone have some white potato over a bunch of wheat, right? Potato is actually pretty nutrient dense and has a lot of potassium in there and a lot of good minerals. I'd rather have someone do that over gluten, complete gluten full, if you will, grains. But it all depends where you're at. The healthier you are, the more versatility and adaptation you have. The more unhealthy you have, or the more diagnostic autoimmunity you have, you really want to be careful. A lot of times, it's just not worth it. Some people they eat some gluten, they're inflamed for a week. It takes them days to get back on the wagon. So it depends upon how long it takes you to get back on the wagon. And if you have a known thyroid issue, there's some data saying that autoimmune response can last for weeks and even months. So it's just not worth it, depending on the damage that may ensue after the fact.
Yep, well said. And yeah, you're talking about like the gluten cross reactivity issue. So like for a while, I had a lot of people doing corn because they thought, okay, I'm gonna be okay, but turns out they weren't okay. So in a lot of cases, yeah, we do remove the corn. If I do a
Much
little bit,
rather see much rather see cassava or yucca chips over anything with corn or anything else like that. So that's much better. Like the Siete brand's pretty darn good, or just a really good white potato chip. Like the Boulders make a good one with avocado or coconut oil. That's really good fat on the potato side.
I've noticed the same thing. Yeah, potato for some reason, even though it's still potentially cross reactive, I've noticed it is better tolerated than corn for most people. So that's good. Maybe it's just a
Yeah,
lower count or maybe a slightly different compound in there.
exactly. And I use a lot of root vegetable chips. So I'll do like a lot of turnips or rutabaga or sweet potato, like a lot of root vegetable, like grain free type of stuff. And that tends to be pretty good. But the nice thing is, once you kind of work through that autoimmune template, you should get a lot of confidence in what you can or can't handle. And then once you're at a high level, if you're going off the reservation too much, you'll start to feel it. And that usually gives you a pretty good idea that you're probably doing too much for you. So our goal is to get you feel really clean. And then once you're really clean, it's kind of easy to notice when you're getting dirty.
Yep. Well said. And the whole point of this is what? Well, it's to give you relief. It's to get you to feel better. It's to get your brain to work better, your joints to feel better, your sleep to be better, your food reactions, your gut, your everything. I mean, the skin, the brain. I mean, this literally can affect every body system here. So we really want to focus on what's the end goal. It's not just tweaking this just to tweak it, make this like an obsessive OCD type thing, because it can get a little crazy. No, it's to get you to feel better. And then while we get you to feel better, we're working behind the scenes on these other root causes, because it's very unlikely that someone became sensitive to all of these foods just out of nowhere, right? There's something that
Yes.
triggered it. And okay, so we're getting you simmering. Okay, we got your diet okay, we got that pillar of the house in. Now, while that's sitting there simmering, let's work back here. And we're going to work on this over here.
Yep.
And then boom, now we go back to this diet. Good job. You've been holding steady. Okay, now let's bring quote normal things back in, and then people tolerate them. So that's kind of the whole rationale. That's kind of our mindset behind this whole thing. When we're working clinically, it's not just the dietitian approach. Here's the diet, have a good life. It's okay, well, why did you have to go to this level of specificity in the first place? And that's the real question.
Exactly. And also, if people want to start having more grains on the regular, I would say make sure your health is really great and stable. And I'd also say, if you wanted to be more certain, run an HLA DQ test for gluten sensitivity. If you have 2 or 8 on there, you definitely want to avoid the gluten. 1 or 3 is going to be a little bit less. And then I think 4 is the only true genotype that is not gluten sensitive. You could still have other problems with the anti-nutrients that are in there or the higher amounts of fermentable carbohydrate. But that'd be my one test, I would say, just to really know that, make sure there's not a genetic issue if you're going to put it in there more on the regular. For me, my big cheats are going to happen if I go out for sushi. I may have a couple of rolls. Usually I like the Alaskan roll that has like a lot of salmon and a lot of avocado, and then there'll be a little bit of white rice. So when I typically cheat, it's going to be getting some white rice for sushi. But I typically use coconut aminos and a soy-free soy sauce and MCT oil. And I'll typically do extra enzymes and extra charcoal during those meals to mitigate the inflammatory response. So that's a kind of couple of little tricks that I kind of do. If not, for me, I just feel too good. I don't want to have a setback. So there's enough substitutes for me where I can engage in that substitute, still feel really good, and not have a problem.
Yep. Yeah. Well said.
Anything else you want to add, Evan? So, one more thing I wanted to say. What if autoimmune paleo is not enough? What does that mean? So some patients, they may have to do carnivore. They may have to do a variation of an autoimmune paleo, low FODMAP SCD template where we're cutting out fermentable carbohydrates, even some of these really good fermented foods, or we may have to be cutting out foods that are high in salicylates and phenols that may have a little bit higher amount of anti-nutrients that, things that could be on the vegetable side, right? Or FODMAPs like broccoli and let's say onions and garlic, things that have good benefits. So we may have to cut out other foods. And again, we see a lot of patients that come in that have done a lot and that are very sick or have a lot of gut inflammation. We may have to go to that extreme. We may even have to do an elemental diet or a carnivore diet. So everyone's a little bit different and they come in from different places. But if an autoimmune diet does not work for you, there's other things that we need to work on. And you'd really want to work with a practitioner at that point because your health issues are a lot more nuanced.
Yeah, and hopefully you're not. Hopefully you're not to that level. But just know that if you've done this and you're still suffering, then number one, there's probably underlying triggers you haven't identified yet, things that are really aggravating your immune system or the gut. So we need to try to find those triggers. And then number two, you can tweak this thing even more to get you stable. The whole thing, the whole goal is get you stable so we can work on root causes here. So it's not just diet and done. Just remember that.
100%. And also, what's the goal of this diet, right? I always tell patients, what's the goal? Because if we don't have like a goal in mind, most people, when they make a diet change, they kind of just go to this place in their head like it's forever. And they kind of have like a little mini funeral, like, oh, I miss my potatoes or my seeds. They kind of have this kind of state of mourning where it's really sad and they're depressed. I always tell my patients the goal is to first increase your nutrient density in your diet. Number two, to decrease inflammation overall, right? And then three, to decrease a lot of the toxins, whether those toxins are plant-based toxins, whether those toxins are you're not eating organic and you're getting pesticides and chemical toxins, all those things are valid. And the goal of that is that now decreases the immune system stress. And if the immune system stress starts to go down, there's less autoimmunity, there's less inflammation in the body, and that kind of starts creating this snowball effect where your body can start to heal as we start addressing infections, supporting the adrenals, addressing nutrient deficiencies, calming down the immune response by addressing infections and using probiotics and other nutrients on that side of the fence.
Yeah, you made a great point, which is the emotional piece. And we could do a whole part 2 podcast on this if people want. We're going into the whole rationale scientific part of that. But if you've got a woman who's addicted to her cookies, you've got to work through the emotional stuff too, right? So we could come in with all these rational, very scientific studies and things you and I've gone into, right? It sounds really attractive and really scientific, but then you got the emotional bubbles popping up in people. And they're going, oh no, but what about this? And what about Thanksgiving? And what about this? And my family and I love to go eat the popcorn at the movies, And so then the emotional piece is hard. So you have to work through that with people. And we have those conversations. So on the face of it, it sounds all easy, right? It's like, okay, just boom, 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 boom. You're great. But then once you actually sit down at the plate and you've got that fork there, then the emotional stuff comes up. It's the husband or wife making fun of you for your choices. I mean, that's a common one. It's if there's a divorced family, it's the child going to the other part of the family where the other family member doesn't believe in this and say this is all quackery. And then they come home after eating pizza all weekend and then they're in an autoimmune flare. Or you go over to the parents' house and, they think it's a joke. So they still try to serve you bread and butter, so there are some things you have to work through on the family emotional side, but it's definitely something that's possible. Everybody can do it.
Yeah. Where I see it a lot, well-meaning grandparents that feed their grandkids cookies, or like they want to spoil them a little bit. That can be really tough too. But yeah, you got to get everyone on the same page. And in general, you got to have a plan. And if you're having a lot of cravings, most of those cravings, a lot of the prodynorphins, which are like opiate-like compounds in grains and dairy, hit that same opiate receptor. So those foods can have a lot of addictive qualities to it. And a lot of people, they're used to operating on a blood sugar roller coaster. So their blood sugar goes up and down because there's not enough good protein or fat in the meal, or they're going too long between meals. So really working out the blood sugar. A lot of times if someone switches from a standard American diet to an autoimmune diet, the two big mistakes they make is, one, they're not getting enough calories from their autoimmune diet. Therefore, they're chronically hungry, which creates cravings. So you have to make sure you're getting enough calories or nutrients. The second thing is they may go too low carb for them. So if someone's needs a little bit more carbs and they're at a relatively more healthy weight, they may go really too low carb, and that may cause more cravings too. So you may have to just add in some good, healthy, safe starches to fill that carb void if those carbs are a good place for you. My default set is always lower carb, higher fat, and then kind of work through that over time, because most people have more insulin resistance, and going lower carb out of the gates helps resolve a lot of that.
Good points. Good points. Yeah. And the gluteomorphins too. I don't know if you said, I think you
It's
said
the same
another
thing. The prodinorphins or gluteomorphins, these are like the opiate-like products like that are in gluten, or the caseomorphins in the dairy.
Yeah. So when people say, oh my God, I'm addicted to my whatever, they're not joking. You literally are. And there can be some sort of a withdrawal from it. And then also from the neurotransmitter perspective, that's something we're going to look at on organic acids testing. So if we see, for example, whether it's low endorphins, low dopamine, low serotonin, we may come in with specific amino acids to try to repair and rebuild. And that can be a good, let's call it a nutritional support band-aid for the brain chemistry, which is causing the underlying craving in the first place. So rather than say, hey, go from the gluten cookie to the grain-free cookie, it's okay. Yeah, maybe you do that, but we're also going to give you a little bit of some DLPA or tryptophan or something to help the brain, because the brain is involved with this too. This is not just the gut, the brain's involved too. So we're thinking about all these variables as we go. It's kind of a moving, it's like I don't know, maybe a good NASCAR analogy. It's like the guys are coming on and changing all the tires and zip, 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 zip. We're doing that in every category. So it's the brain, it's the gut, it's the immunity, it's the adrenals. We're simultaneously working on all of these pieces, and then boom, you succeed, you feel better. So I think we should wrap it up if you're ready to.
I think we can, man. I think we did a great job kind of outlining everything. This will be a good reference for my patients as well that, just kind of want more intel on the autoimmune side. If you're listening to this and you want to dive in deeper and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed with some of the diet changes out of the gates, definitely reach out to myself or Evan at evanbrand.com. And there's a little link there where you can click the schedule, or myself, Dr. J at justinhealth.com. We're happy to help you. And we have experience doing this for over a decade with thousands of patients. And if you're ready to take that next step, we're here to help you all. If not, just utilize all this free information and just kind of execute on it and make yourself healthier. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, that's fine. But for me and you and many others, it's better to have a guide. It's better to have the data. Test, don't guess. Get the information, know what you're up against so you can figure out. And when we say test, don't guess, we're talking the root cause stuff. We may not run a food panel right out of the gate, but we're going to run a gut panel out of the gate and figure out what infections could be causing these issues in the first place. So thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys, and we'll be in touch.
Put your comments down below. Let me know your success on an autoimmune diet. Really want to know. And thanks for sharing. You guys have a good one. Take care, y'all.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.